The signal Guy de Maupassant. The young Marquise de was still resting in her locked, fragrant bedroom, on a vast, soft, and low bed, amidst light batiste linen as fine as lace and soothing as a kiss. She slept alone, peacefully, with the happy and profound sleep of a divorced woman. She was awakened by voices, clearly audible from the small blue drawing room. She recognized her intimate friend, the Baron de Grangery, who was trying to gain entry and arguing with the lady's maid, who was refusing her admission to the bedchamber. The Marquise rose, slid back the bolt, turned the key, and, lifting the heavy portiere, thrust her head out into the hallway, just her head, nestled in a cloud of blonde hair. "What has happened?" she murmured. "Why have you come so early? It is not yet 9. The Baroness, deathly pale and nervously agitated, replied, "I must speak with you. Something dreadful has befallen me." "Come in, then, my dear." Her friend entered. They exchanged kisses, and the Marquise settled back in a bed while the maid threw open the windows, letting in streams of sunlight and fresh air. When the maid had withdrawn, Madame de Renedon declared, "Well, tell me." Madame de Grangery began to cry, shedding those pretty, shimmering tears that only add to a woman's charm, and she stammered, not wiping them away to avoid reddening her eyes. "Oh, my dear, what happened to me is vile, abominable. I did not sleep a wink all night, not a single minute. Imagine, not a minute. Just feel how my heart is racing." And, taking her friend's hand, she pressed it to her breast, to that rounded and resilient casing which shields a woman's heart, and with which men often content themselves, without aspiring to delve deeper. Her heart was indeed beating a rapid tattoo. She continued, "It happened to me yesterday afternoon, around 4 o'clock or half past. I cannot recall precisely. You know my apartment, of course. You know my boudoir on the 2nd floor, the very room where I spend almost all my time, overlooks the Rue Saint-Lazare. You are also aware that I adore sitting by the window and watching the passers-by. That neighborhood near the station is so lively, noisy, bustling. In short, I am delighted by it. So, yesterday, I was seated in the low armchair I placed right by the window. It was wide open, and I was thinking of nothing at all, simply breathing the fresh air. Do you remember what a magnificent day it was? Suddenly, I noticed that on the opposite side of the street, directly across from me, a woman is also sitting at her window, dressed in red, and I was wearing my favorite lilac dress. The woman was a stranger to me, some new tenant who moved in a month ago. As it had been raining constantly, I had not yet seen her. But I instantly grasped that she was a woman of easy virtue. At first, I was indignant and shocked that she had taken a seat at her window, just as I had, but then, little by little, observing her began to amuse me. She sat, leaning on the windowsill, and scrutinized the men, while they in turn glanced up at her, all of them, or nearly all. One might have thought that, as they approached the building, they had somehow been forewarned or sensed her, as a hound scents game. They would suddenly lift their heads and exchange a swift, conspiratorial glance with her. Her look said, "Well, shall we?" Their look replied, "No time," or "Another time," or else, "I'm penniless," or even, "Be off with you, wretched creature." This last phrase was uttered by the eyes of respectable family men. You cannot imagine how entertaining it was to watch her little tricks, or rather, her work. Sometimes she would suddenly close her window, and I would see some gentleman disappear into the entrance. She would hook him, just as an angler lands a minnow. Then I would glance at the clock. They spent between 12 and 20 minutes together, never more. Honestly, in the end, that spider began to agitate me. Besides, she was rather pretty. I asked myself, what does she do to make herself understood so easily, so quickly, and so unmistakably? Does she give some signal with her head or hand in addition to the look? And I armed myself with an opera glass to decipher her methods. Oh, it was all disgustingly simple. First a quick glance, then a smile, followed by an almost imperceptible movement of the head, rather like the question, "Well, will you come up?" But the movement was so light, so vague, so restrained, that one truly had to reach the pinnacle of the art to execute it as she did. I thought, but could I replicate that movement of the head, that slight, inviting, and yet charming lift of the chin? She made it look so natural. I went to the mirror and tried it. You know, my dear, I did it even better, far more gracefully. I was delighted and returned to the window. Now, the poor thing couldn't attract anyone, absolutely not a soul. Clearly, luck wasn't with her today. How truly awful it must be to earn one's living that way. Awful, though it must be amusing at times, for among the men scurrying about the street, there are some who are far from unpleasant. Now they were all walking on my side of the street, while our pavement was empty. The sun was sinking. They passed by one after another, young and old, dark-haired and fair, graying and completely silver. Among them were some quite agreeable ones, really very attractive indeed, my dear, far more interesting than my husband, and even your former one, since you're divorced. Now you can choose. And I thought, could I, a respectable woman, give them that very signal? And suddenly I was seized by a mad desire to try it, a desire as sudden as a pregnant woman's whim, an irrepressible desire, you know, one of those that one cannot resist. I get that sometimes. It's silly, isn't it? Sometimes I think we women have the soul of a monkey. By the way, I was once told, a doctor assured me of it, that a monkey's brain is very similar to ours. We are always imitating someone. In the first months of marriage, we adopt our husband's habits if we love them, then the manners of our lovers, our friends, our confessors if we like them. We borrow their way of thinking, their words, their gestures, in short, everything. How stupid it is. Anyway, when I desperately want to do something, I invariably do it. And I decided, well then I'll try it. On just one, a single one, simply out of curiosity. What can happen to me? Absolutely nothing. We'll exchange smiles, that's all, and I'll never see him again, and if I do, he won't recognize me, and if he does, I'll simply deny it, that's all. I began to choose. I wanted to find someone rather handsome. Suddenly I see a tall blond man is walking by, a very distinguished-looking young man. You know how I love blondes. I look at him. He looks at me. I smile. He smiles back. I make that movement. Oh, a barely perceptible one. He nods his head in agreement. And then he is walking into our building entrance, my dear. You cannot imagine what was happening to me at that moment. Truly, I thought I would lose my mind. Oh, what a nightmare. Just think, he will now speak to Joseph, and Joseph is so devoted to my husband. He will immediately assume I have known this gentleman for a long time. What should I do, tell me? What should I do? He is about to ring our bell. What is to be done? I decided the best course was to rush to meet him, to tell him he was mistaken, to beg him to leave. He would take pity on a woman, on an unfortunate woman. I dashed to the door and flung it open just at the moment he reached for the bell. Utterly distraught, I whispered, "Go away, sir, go away. You are mistaken. I am an honest woman, I am married. This is a misunderstanding, a terrible error. I mistook you for an acquaintance whom you strongly resemble. I beg you have pity on me, sir. My dear, he laughed in response and said, a clever story, my kitten, but I've heard this fairy tale more than once. So you're married. That means 2 Louis d'Or instead of 1. You'll get them. Now lead the way. He pushed me aside and shut the door. I stood frozen before him, paralyzed with horror. He began kissing me, put his arm around my waist, and dragged me into the drawing room. The door there stood wide open. Then he glanced around the room like a bailiff and declared, "Well, I'll be damned. You're quite cozy here, very chic indeed. Seems your purse must be completely empty if you've taken to window shopping." I began pleading with him again. "Sir, please leave. Leave. My husband will return any moment. He comes home at this time every day. I swear to you, you're terribly mistaken." And he answered me quite calmly, "Enough of these airs, my dear. If your husband shows up, I'll slip him 5 francs to go drink something across the street." Then he noticed Raoul's portrait on the mantelpiece and asked, "Is this your husband?" "Yes, that's him. Not exactly a pretty face." "And who's this?" "A friend. It was your photograph, my dear. You remember, the one in the ball gown." I no longer knew what I was saying and mumbled, "Yes, a friend. Quite attractive. You must introduce me." Meanwhile, the clock struck 5, and Raoul returns every day at past. Just imagine what would have happened if he'd found this man here. And so, I completely lost my head, utterly, and decided that the best thing would be to get rid of him quickly, to end it all. You understand, and since there was no other way, and without it he'd never have left, I locked the drawing-room door, and, well, that's all. The Marquise de Renedin burst into wild laughter, burying her face in the pillow and shaking the entire bed. When she'd somewhat recovered, she asked, "Well, was he handsome?" "Quite. And you're still complaining?" "But you must understand, my dear. He said he'd come back tomorrow at the same time, and I'm terrified. You can't imagine how persistent he is and stubborn. What should I do? Tell me, what should I do?" The Marquise sat up in bed to think, then suddenly declared with confidence, "Have him arrested." The Baroness was stunned. She stammered, What did you say? What an idea. Arrest him? But on what grounds?" "Simple. Go to the police commissioner and state that a certain gentleman has been pursuing you for 3 months, that yesterday he had the audacity to force his way into your home, that he's threatening to repeat his visit tomorrow, and that you require the protection of the law. They'll assign you a couple of officers who will arrest him." "But, my dear, what if he talks?" "Silly. No one will believe him, especially if you embellish your story properly for the commissioner. You'll be believed unconditionally. You're a lady from high society." "Oh, I could never dare." "You'll have to dare, my dear, or you're lost. Just think, he might insult me when they arrest him. Let him, but you'll have witnesses, and he'll be convicted." "Convicted? Of what?" "Fined. In such cases, one mustn't stand on ceremony." "Oh, speaking of money, something else is tormenting me, terribly." He left 2 Louis d'Or on the mantelpiece. 2 Louis d'Or? Yes. Is that all? That's all. Rather meager. I'd be insulted. Well, and so, what should I do with this money? The Marquise thought for a few seconds, then replied with a serious expression, "My dear, you must buy a little gift for your husband. It's only fair. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories. Share your impressions and thoughts in the comments. I'll be delighted to chat with you.